Most self-taught men don't fail because they lack intelligence. They fail because they secretly expect to be discovered. You say you're playing the long-term game. You say you don't need validation. You say you're building quietly. But if you're honest, part of you still wants recognition before you've earned insulation. You want proof that this isolation means something. You want a signal that the effort is visible, that craving is the fracture. No one explains this early. The long-term game begins when recognition becomes irrelevant, not postponed, removed. The self-taught man starts alone, but not in a romantic way people imagine. Not in a dark room with dramatic music. He starts in plain reality, working a job that doesn't reflect his ceiling, holding ideas no one asked for, studying skills that produce no applause, improving in ways that generate zero status feedback. And that's where most men panic, because invisibility feels like evidence of inadequacy. Silence feels like stagnation. Slow progress feels like losing. So they rush. They pivot too often. They chase trends. They perform productivity instead of compounding it. They leak strategy by talking too soon. They confuse movement with leverage. Elite positioning is not built on movement. It's built on restraint. The long-term game is not about patience as virtue. It's about structural advantage. It's about understanding that time either compounds you or exposes you. If your habits are weak, time humiliates you. If your identity is unstable, time fragments you. If your focus is scattered, time erodes you. Time is not neutral. This is the part no one wants to admit. Most self-taught men are not playing long-term. They are coping long-term. There's a difference. Coping is surviving without strategy. Playing long-term is engineering inevitability. That requires something uncomfortable. It requires letting go of the fantasy that someone will eventually notice how disciplined you've been. It requires accepting that obscurity may last longer than your ego can tolerate. It requires building skill sets that don't pay socially for years. And here's the threat. If you cannot operate without applause, you will sabotage every high-level trajectory you attempt. You will reveal too early. You will settle too early. You will burn leverage for short-term relief. The elite are not self-taught because they lacked access. They are self-taught because they stopped waiting for permission. There is a psychological shift that separates the man who dabbles from the man who compounds. It is not motivation. It is not inspiration. It is a decision about time horizon. When you extend your horizon beyond the emotional tolerance of most people around you, you become structurally different. Fewer competitors survive there. That's the quiet advantage. But extending your horizon comes with a cost. You will look late. You will look behind. You will look underestimated. And if your ego still needs comparison to feel stable, you won't endure it. This channel is not for men chasing quick validation. It's for men building insulation against volatility. If that's you, subscribe. Not for motivation, for calibration, because the real shift hasn't even started yet. Right now, you still believe effort guarantees outcome. In the long-term game, that belief dies first. What you're experiencing right now is not lack of progress. It's identity friction. When a man decides to build himself without external structure, his nervous system reacts before his logic stabilizes. You remove validation. You reduce noise. You step away from social comparison. On the surface, that looks disciplined. Internally, it triggers threat detection because your ego is trained in public. Most men don't realize how dependent their drive is on being seen. School grades, social approval, promotions, likes, titles. Every milestone came with witnesses. Remove witnesses and something destabilizes. The brain interprets invisibility as risk. If no one sees you rising, how do you confirm you are not declining? This is where self-doubt enters quietly, not dramatic doubt, subtle doubt, the kind that whispers, maybe this isn't working, the kind that pushes you to check metrics too often, the kind that tempts you to pivot strategies every few months, the kind that makes you compare your year 5 to someone else's highlight reel. This is ego defense activating. When recognition disappears, the ego scrambles to protect identity. It looks for quick wins. It seeks reassurance. It tries to reintroduce short-term rewards. If you don't understand this mechanism, you will mislabel it as intuition. It's not intuition, it's withdrawal. You are withdrawing from social dopamine. The long-term game feels slow because it is silent. No applause, no visible rank increase, no immediate status elevation, just repetition, just refinement, just skill stacking without ceremony. And that silence creates emotional fatigue. You begin to feel invisible, not socially, existentially, as if your effort is dissolving into nothing. This is the dangerous phase, because invisibility can mutate into resentment, and resentment quietly erodes discipline. Most men quit here, not publicly, internally. They keep working, but the edge is gone. The standards lower slightly. The focus fragments. They start consuming more than creating. They rationalize small compromises. They tell themselves, balance is maturity when it is actually retreat. This is identity fragmentation. Part of you wants elite positioning. Another part wants comfort and acknowledgement. If these parts are not integrated, you oscillate. Intense effort, followed by emotional crash, followed by distraction, followed by renewed intensity. The cycle feels productive. It is not. Consistency requires emotional containment. You must learn to operate without emotional feedback loops. That means not overreacting to slow months, not over-celebrating small wins, not dramatizing setbacks. Stability is the advantage. Emotional neutrality compounds faster than intensity. And here's the uncomfortable truth. If you still need visible progress to stay disciplined, you are not yet playing long-term. You are negotiating with discomfort. The elite version of you does not negotiate with timelines. If this level of analysis feels rare where you are, subscribe. Not to feel better, to stay aligned with men who understand that invisibility is not punishment, it's filtration. Because what comes next is harder. You will have to let parts of your current identity collapse, and you won't like which parts those are. At some point, you will notice something unsettling. The version of you that started this journey cannot finish it. The habits that got you moving are not strong enough to get you positioned. The ambition that felt powerful in the beginning starts to feel reactive. You realize you were driven less by vision and more by irritation, less by structure and more by comparison. This is where the old identity begins to crack, not in a dramatic collapse, in a quiet erosion. The routines still exist. The goals are still written down, but internally, something feels misaligned. You sense that if you continue operating from the same psychological foundation, you will cap out early. Most men resist this phase. They cling to the original narrative, the underdog story, the revenge arc, the desire to prove people wrong. Those motivations are explosive, but they are short-term fuel. They burn hot, then they burn out. If you try to build elite positioning on emotional revenge, you will overextend. If you build it on insecurity, you will chase optics. If you build it on fear of being average, you will rush milestones just to escape discomfort. The long-term game requires a colder foundation. This is the restructuring phase, and it feels like regression. You become quieter, more selective, less reactive. You stop announcing plans. You reduce unnecessary output. From the outside, it can look like you lost momentum. Internally, you are recalibrating. But here is the risk. If you misinterpret this solitude as failure, you will sabotage the rebuild. You will reintroduce noise just to feel alive again. You will chase stimulation because structure feels slow. And you will rebuild the same identity with better tools, but identical flaws. That is the trap. The collapse of the old self is not depression, it is reorganization, but only if you allow it to complete. You must be willing to outgrow motivations that once defined you. You must accept that the man who needed validation cannot coexist with the man who controls timing. You must tolerate being misunderstood while your internal architecture changes. Few men endure this without flinching, because when the ego loses its old fuel, it panics. It looks for something familiar to hold on to: status, attention, conflict, anything to avoid the silence of restructuring. If you are in this phase, you feel it. The distance between who you were and who you're becoming. It's uncomfortable, isolating, hard to explain. Comment the city you're watching from. I want to see where this silent rebuild is happening, not for numbers, for pattern recognition, because what determines whether this collapse becomes elevation or decay is what you do next. And most men make the wrong move right here. Now comes the part most men avoid. You want to blame the environment, the market, the algorithm, your upbringing, the lack of mentorship, the distractions of modern life. And yes, those variables exist, but they are not decisive. What collapses your trajectory is not pressure, it's lack of internal structure. If you are self-taught, you do not have imposed discipline. No one audits your focus. No one enforces your standards. No one corrects your drift. That freedom feels powerful in the beginning. Later, it exposes you, because without structure, intensity becomes random. You work hard for 3 weeks. Then your sleep slips. Your diet loosens. Your focus fragments. You justify it because you deserve balance. But what you call balance is often emotional leakage. You are not tired. You are undirected. Victimhood at this level is subtle. It doesn't sound like complaining. It sounds like sophisticated excuses. I just need the right opportunity. I'm waiting for the right time. I work better under pressure. No, you work when forced. Elite positioning requires self-enforcement, cognitive control, behavioral consistency, emotional containment. Cognitive control means you do not believe every thought you produce, especially the ones that suggest slowing down without strategic reason. Behavioral consistency means your standards do not fluctuate based on mood. Emotional containment means you do not let frustration dictate decisions. Most men sabotage long-term compounding because they react. They react to slow months. They react to others' success. They react to temporary boredom. Reaction destroys leverage. If you cannot control your internal state, time will amplify your weaknesses instead of your strengths. This is where responsibility becomes unavoidable. No one is coming to optimize your schedule. No one is designing your routines. No one is protecting your focus. If you fail to build structure, The collapse you felt in the last phase will not turn into reinvention. It will turn into quiet decay. Decay is dangerous because it feels comfortable. You stay busy, you stay informed, you stay in the game, but your edge dulls, your standards lower gradually. Your long-term strategy dissolves into short-term maintenance. The long game is not sustained by motivation. It is sustained by rules, personal rules, non-negotiable ones, wake time, training time, study blocks, output quotas, review cycles, environmental controls. These are not productivity hacks. They are identity anchors. They prevent emotional weather from rewriting your trajectory. If you refuse structure because it feels restrictive, understand what you are choosing instead. You are choosing drift. And drift never produces elite outcomes. It produces average stability. This is the fork. Either you impose order on yourself, or entropy will do it for you. One path builds insulation. The other builds regret. There is no third option. At the beginning, you believed effort guaranteed outcome, that if you worked hard enough, long enough, recognition would eventually align with merit. That belief had to die, because the long-term game is not about being rewarded. It is about becoming structurally undeniable. Here is what must be eliminated first: the need to be seen early, the urge to explain your strategy, the habit of measuring progress through external response. Those are liabilities. They distort pacing. They create impatience. They invite exposure before strength has matured. You remove them quietly, then you build. You build skill stacks that compound without applause. You build financial discipline that reduces emotional pressure. You build physical standards that stabilize energy. You build cognitive control so your decisions are not mood-driven. You build routines that operate whether you feel inspired or not. None of this is dramatic. It is repetitive. It is controlled. It is often boring. That is why few men sustain it. But here's the shift that matters. Once your identity is anchored in structure instead of validation, time stops feeling threatening. Slow months no longer shake you. Silence no longer feels like rejection. You are no longer playing to be noticed. You are positioning to be unavoidable. Elite status is not a moment. It is accumulated insulation. Insulation from financial stress, from emotional volatility, from social pressure, from impulsive decisions. When insulation increases, optionality increases. You choose when to move. You choose when to speak. You choose when to reveal. Control replaces urgency, and something else happens quietly. The hunger for attention fades. Not because you achieved everything, but because you no longer need external confirmation to stabilize your identity. You trust your own audit. You measure progress internally. You correct yourself without drama. That is power, not loud, not flashy, not viral, stable. The self-taught man who survives long enough without leaking discipline becomes rare by default. Most competitors eliminate themselves through impatience, ego exposure, or inconsistency. You do not need to defeat them. You need to outlast their instability. If this mindset resonates, the next video goes deeper into how to design personal systems that make discipline automatic instead of heroic. Watch it immediately. Do not let this clarity dissolve into passive agreement, because the long-term game does not reward understanding. It rewards execution.